Hi, this is Doug.
Hi, it's Moshe.
Let me send it over to Neal.
Hey, guys. Don't do me any favors. Sending it over. Hey, all right, Neal, my dates are as follows. September 13, 14, 15, and we'll go with 16. I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. at the Improv. Fuck with me there. And then I'm going to be in Toronto for the Just for Laughs thing, JFL 42. That week. Just go on their website, buy a pass. It's a good time. And over to you guys.
Hey, it's Moshe. I'm going to be at that very same festival, Just for Laughs, Toronto, September the 23rd, I believe, whatever that Saturday is. And that very same weekend, if you want to see me in L.A., I'll be at the Riot Comedy Festival as well. So Friday night L.A., Saturday night Toronto, Sunday night L.A. I'm so jet setting. It's incredible. And fuck with my book on paperback. It comes out very soon. And also, The New Normal premieres on September 11th. So fuck with that.
Hey, this is Doug. On September 15th, I'll be at a place called Sync Space in Los Angeles, and that's a comedy noise show, and that's going to be wonderful. Also going to be in Australia with Tim and Eric at the end of September. Bye.
And this is Larry Wilmore. Just watch Larry Wilmore's Race, Religion, and Sex on Showtime. All this month, end of August, all of September. No live dates. I just want niggas to watch my show.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have our first N-word.
Yes, sir. Hey,
No. Usually it's us, so thank God.
hey, let's start the champs, ladies and gentlemen.
I like it when you say the N-word around white guys. We say, oh, okay, we can say it.
Oh, no, I know.
Now you're fucking with the champs.
All right, guys, that was
I
our
didn't say we could all.
that was our most over talky intro of all time. You guys, it's the Champs podcast, and you're fucking with it. And it's don't make fun of me because I'm trying to maintain a modicum of professionalism. We are here in say it again.
You guys,
we're here on the lot in Hollywood.
Oh, we switched
California.
to the lot in Hollywood. We're no longer at my mansion.
Super
Someone called it
exciting.
my mansion in Venice.
I was a little confused on the lot. I'm like, well, what lot?
Yeah, the lot
No, it was the
in Hollywood.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit too casual.
With what?
We got to do this grand intro.
No, I know, that's-
Larry, you too. Hold on, watch this. You're gonna be so excited what I'm about to do.
This-
Ladies and gentlemen, we got a very special guest here on the podcast today. You may remember him from such things as 5 seconds ago talking with Neal, or he's got a brand new Showtime special out right now. He's the Senior Black Correspondent on The Daily Show and a comedy legend. Put your hands together for Larry Wilmore.
Larry Wilmore.
Larry, you've done a lot of work, but I'm most proud of 5 seconds ago.
You were great. Yeah. Clap. Play that every time from now on.
fun.
That's a great drop.
Thanks.
All right, Larry. Well, first of all,
Yes.
the credit you don't. People, I don't know what people lead. Now they know you from The Daily Show.
Yes.
But you and I'll explain this by way of an anecdote. When I was pulling into the lot today, the security woman was like, "You got to park in the structure," and I was like, "I'm not parking in the structure."
I'm Neal Brennan.
I'm Neal Brennan. Neal Brennan don't park in no structure.
Right.
And then she's
That's
like, "Well,
right.
you can."
Don't you know who I am?
So then I go, "Can I park normal?" And she's like, "Well, all right, I'm gonna hook you up. You can park normal. You can park in VIP." But and I go, well, I have some other people coming. And she goes, well, they're gonna have to park in the structure. And I go, can one of them park in VIP and I'll park in the structure? I wanted Larry to park in the in VIP because you're a VIPer, I guess. And this is a black woman, and she was kind of giving me the runaround. And I go, he created the Bernie Mac show.
See?
Okay? Which you think, like, that's going to do it. And she goes,
Did she put on a top hat? Dun, 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 dun. That's all you had to say. The magic word.
That's the way I feel.
usually that works. But she was like, and why would you say that to me?
Ooh.
Yeah. She said, why would you say that to me?
That is a fair and awesome question.
And I said, you know what I said to her? I go, thought you might be a fan.
Oh,
that was the
I
right
didn't say-
answer.
yeah, I didn't go like because. I just said because I thought you might be a fan.
And what did she say?
She said she sort of backed away, and then to make it seem, I go, he's also on the Daily Show.
Daily Show.
See, what the fuck is a motherfucking Daily Show?
Man, I don't fuck with the Daily.
What day does
Man.
it come on?
What
How the
time
fuck
that
did
come
you
on?
say
Yeah.
that to me?
No, 3 black people
We'll get to that
total
later.
watch The Daily Show.
Yeah, it's Colin Powell.
It's you, Wyatt Cenac, and what's
At
that?
any given time.
Yeah.
3 total.
Legally, it's usually
So she's either one of the 3 or she's not.
Colin Powell, Donna Brazile,
Colin doesn't watch the Daily Show.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Do you think he's like a hardcore
I don't
Republican?
think Donna Brazile watches it either. But
You don't
a
think
lot
so?
of those political people, some of them are humorless, man. They
Yeah.
have no sense of humor. Some do.
All right, so Larry Wilmore,
Yeah.
you grew up in Los
we do.
Angeles.
In Pomona,
Into like in nice people?
where I grew up, or my
No,
family?
your family.
Why would you say that to me?
Exactly. That guard is my aunt. I want you to know. So,
She raised me.
just so you know who you're talking to. Yeah, it's the same thing. Everybody's fucked up. Nobody knows it. Everybody's funny, but they don't know why. All that kind of stuff. Parents got divorced when I was young, but
Your fault.
it was completely my fault, right? Which they let me know all the time. And now they spend more time together than they did when they were married.
Do they really?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Why?
I don't know. It's just very uncomfortable.
Do they? Is it like at events, or they just kick it?
No, they just
At
spend time
events?
together. And
Like
they-
at like christenings, shit
No.
like that, whatever your religion
well,
is.
I tell you what's horrible too is when you catch your old parents having sex. That's not good.
Have you caught that?
No, but my brother did.
How old were they?
Like this is recent. This is the last couple of years.
That's gotta hurt.
Wow.
That's not
Fucked
good.
up shit right there, man.
Exactly.
That's literally gotta hurt.
Yeah, that literally does.
You know
have
how
to
you're
hurt.
not supposed to look at an eclipse, and you find ways. You say, "Well, maybe if I bounce the eclipse off of the
off of it,
cardboard,
yeah.
or I do this." No, there's no combination of looking at an eclipse that is ever good for it.
That's
So you
hilarious.
walked
It's
into
the
your
same thing.
parents having sex at 80 years
No,
old
my
with
brother.
tinfoil on
Yes,
a piece of
exactly.
cardboard, looking at it
Yeah.
backwards. Like,
And it was still like
He
a
had-
huge amount of
and
light
he had
hitting your brother.
welder's glasses on at the same time.
Still,
I
like-
see how I was made.
It's like the
Exactly.
Pulp Fiction thing of
Yeah.
just still like.
Cannot see him. It's those Tex Avery eyes. That,
When did you start doing stand up?
I started in the early '80s,
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were
back when Reagan was president and shit.
and you were successful pretty quickly?
Well, I had kind of a dual career. I was a theater major in school, and I started as an actor and a comedian. So I did stand up, but then I also, did acting stuff. But I kind of kept it separate, that kind of thing. So I did theater and that kind of stuff too, along the same time. But I was successful pretty quickly in terms of headlining clubs and that kind of stuff. But back
How
then,
quickly?
Like in 2 years, I was headlining.
Yeah,
after I was
great.
doing it. But back then,
And back then they would just take your word for it. If you were like
no.
me,
If you had an LA credit, that was the key.
LA credit, like
Like I
evening
was
at the
from
Improv,
LA.
or you were from LA and you
I
were
was from
past.
LA and I had appeared on The Facts of Life.
Oh man.
Swear to God, that was all I
Oh,
needed.
that's hilarious.
Facts of Life? Oh, you're in.
Come right in.
I heard this
What's
great.
Tootie like?
I heard this great story about the facts of life. What was the cerebral palsy person's name?
Jerry.
Jerry Jewell.
Who
Jerry
did
Jewell, right.
stand up, right?
Yes.
So I heard this story recently at work with the Brody Stevens was on stage at the Comedy Store, and he was like, I don't know what's happening, but somebody started heckling him. It was just like, "You aren't funny," like that, and he goes, "What are you, Jerry Jewell over there?" And she stood up and she's like, "I am Jerry Jewell," and it was her.
Oh my
And
God.
the irony is at the end she went, "But you're my best friend."
Well, the thing is, you take the good, you take
she
the
was
bad.
only mad for a second. She
I
was
have
only mad for
a Tootie story.
Oh, I wonder.
I'll try to make it as short as possible. Kim Fields at the 50th anniversary of
The Facts of Life.
well, no. There was like an NBC 50th anniversary thing celebration, and they had all the stars from all of NBC,
Right.
and it was shot in the SNL studios. And my friend Mike Schur was working on it.
Oh, yeah, Mike.
And yeah,
Mike
you
from
know
The
Mike from The
Office,
Office.
yeah.
Yeah. So Schur and Higgins Higgins from
Right.
Jimmy's show were producing the segment where the segment was Kim Fields stands up and goes like, "Hey, I can't. I have bad seats. I can't see."
Right.
And then and they're like, "Sorry, miss. There's nothing we can do." And then you hear Tracy Morgan off screen go, "Yo, that's Tootie. Yo, that's Tootie, man. Yo, that's Tootie." Then they cut to Tracy like, "You have any idea who you're dealing with? That's Tootie right there." So they do the rehearsal. Afterward, Kim Fields goes to Schur and Higgins and Tracy like, "Hey guys, can I talk to you for a second? Hey, just so you know, like I'm like a adult and like I'm not Tootie. That was a character I played. I'm like a director. I'm a mother. I'm a ton of things. So if you please wouldn't mind calling me Kim Fields." And they're all like,
Right.
"Yeah, of course."
Yeah, no problem.
She walks away and Tracy goes, "Tootie, right?"
That bitch is Tootie, man. I don't care what she
And
says.
they're like,
You know that's Tootie.
That's
yeah,
exactly
like-
some shit Tootie would say.
Facts of life.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
Classic.
Thank you.
Hey, that's my episode. But those girls ate a lot. They had a huge breakfast spread every morning.
Did they really?
They did. Hell yeah, they did.
It's hilarious.
Shoveling food into them.
Yeah. And,
you know this next comedian, he lives in Los Angeles, and you might know him from The
back
Facts
then,
of
but I
Life.
bet they did know you from The Facts of Life. Because,
Yeah.
like, in people, when you went to shows, did people recognize you?
No, it was good for the bookers. That's what it was good for. But
Right.
the people in the audience didn't know.
Oh, they didn't know.
No. Because I did a couple of. I was on it like twice, but it wasn't that big a deal. People would not have known.
Oh, okay.
But you know,
I thought it was going to be one of those things of like, honey.
I got more juice from being on Star Search, the original Star Search. I was on a few episodes. And I did this thing where I went to Korea to perform for the troops. This is like back in the late 80s. And everybody
This is during the Korean War. Go
exactly.
ahead.
This is the Korean War. But I was more like known for a couple episodes of that than for anything I ever did.
How far did you get?
I just did like 3 episodes.
Who beat you?
Michael Collier, the homeless.
All right.
The homeless.
Yeah, he ended up winning, right?
But here's the thing. But I got to do a bit that you could never do today. I did my impression of Ike and Tina Turner's last performance together. And I had like the wig on, and you couldn't see my face. I'm going like that, and you heard the psh, psh, during the song. Like I choreographed it so it would come right on the beat.
Oh, that's great.
And then, and during that part it would go psh, 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 and it's like dance, bitch, and you heard like gunshots.
Okay.
I mean, I used to close my act with it.
Of course you did.
But you could never do that joke today.
You couldn't do it anywhere, let alone on television.
Just think, after I did that bit, cut to Egg McMahon going, yes, very good.
Very good. Domestic violence. Ha ha ha. Yes.
Come on.
So you started doing well with the stand-up.
Right?
Headlining.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But, as a stand-up, I did a lot of political humor. I did off-the-wall jokes. I did impressions. I had like a writer's act, kind of a hodgepodge act. It worked really well in
That's
clubs.
a funny thing. Explain what you mean by writer's act.
Writer's act really is an act of anything you find funny, as opposed to an act that comes out of your persona and everything is geared towards that particular persona.
That's fascinating. I've never heard that phrase before.
It's a great phrase. That's why I made him repeat it, because it is. Did I ever tell you what Brewer said to me one time? Me, Brewer, and Tracy were writing a movie one time, and I pitched a joke to Brewer, and it was like a cutaway joke,
right.
and he was just going to react, but it was a good joke. And Brewer goes, "That's a writer's joke, man." And I was literally like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." And then Chappelle finally, the point is, Chappelle would go, "Well, what am I going to do?" During if I would pitch a sketch, he'd go like, "Well, what am I going to do during it?" Meaning like funny for funny's sake,
right,
isn't helpful if you're. And it's almost what Aziz was saying, like it's coming from you, whereas the joke about sheets can come from anywhere.
100%. I always say, like, when you know you're getting to your voice as a comedian is when you stop being worried about joke thievery, because your jokes stop being
That's a very good
stealable.
point. The other thing was I had a little bit of both, because the jokes were from my point of view, but it didn't follow in one form. So some jokes were a completely different style than other jokes. Right. But it would still be me. So
it was all about domestic violence. That was sort of your thing.
That was the theme.
I had abstract domestic violence jokes. I had act-outs of domestic violence. I had one-liners of domestic violence.
So-called domestic violence.
Knock, knock, who's there? Bitch, you know who the fuck this is.
But the key is, though, when you can write a really good joke and it is in your voice, that's the best kind of joke. Woody Allen was a good example of that, of his stand-up.
It's in your voice?
Yeah, but it is joke, set up, punchline, but it's still
a classically set up joke. Like, I'll give you an example. George Carlin's a great example of it. George Carlin had jokes, but they were in his voice, so they don't sound like jokes because it's so in his voice. But those are jokes. If you look at A Place for My Stuff, that's carefully constructed. That has a bit.
Oh yeah, but that's a bit.
A fat, chunky bit, right?
That is a bit. That is like but that's like the football.
Right.
I think we all might be talking about like 5 shades of slightly different things.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's all in that same
like
area.
later George Carlin is not like, I wouldn't consider that like writer's jokes, because that's just completely his like point of view on the world,
Well, I'm making a distinction between a joke and something just being funny just from your voice.
Oh,
just
I see.
saying,
Okay.
I don't think so.
Right.
That's not
Standing
a joke.
ovation.
That's just somebody being funny.
Oh, okay.
Whatever it is, it has to get a laugh. If it doesn't get a laugh, as Chris Rock said, it's not a joke. It's just a sentence.
Yeah, it's a lecture. If it doesn't get a laugh. And all right, so then you and did you find that?
So here was the key. So for my act, because of what it was, and at the time, Def Comedy Jam was just starting. That movement was
Yeah,
starting.
so 90, 91.
Yeah, around that time when I would have gone up to whatever that next level. When I would have gone up to whatever that next level is. Like, I wasn't the type of comic who could audition for a show like In Living Color, but I could write for it.
Yeah. We always talk about how on here, in the black comedy world, being a writer is considered second class. It's like all the premium is put on performing.
Right.
And then if you're like, oh, that motherfucker's a writer.
Right.
You know.
But Neal, I never worried about that kind of shit. You know, I just do what I do and just. But I knew I wanted to eventually write and produce my own thing, so I had to learn how to do that. So
you knew that from the beginning. You wanted to make your own stuff.
I had to create my own space.
Yeah.
But I feel like you just did it.
Right.
Meaning.
Well, I've been doing it over like the last 20 years.
Right, but I mean, in terms of Larry Wilmore, it's never been that before, right?
Right.
It was. All right, so let's talk about the writing. So you wrote for In Living Color the whole time?
No, that was I started the second season, third season, wrote for a couple of seasons, and then went into sitcoms after that.
What's the craziest thing that happened during In Living Color for you?
The craziest thing? Well, you know, I was there when Jim Carrey first started talking out of his butt. Mm-hmm. And that was crazy because it was tense because there was like Jim was going through some contract stuff then, and we had a table read, and when we would have table reads, we would have like a packet of 25 sketches, and the actors would look at it for the first time. And Jim Carrey was unbelievable. He would have a full, realized three-dimensional character for each one he read upon first seeing it.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like that.
And he wasn't getting tips like, hey, we're going to have you do this.
Nothing.
It would be in the moment.
In the moment. He would just commit, and he would just be that, right?
Right.
So he was upset. So Keenan is at the head of the table, and Jim is the first position there. You know, it's a long writer's table. And Jim Carrey gets up, and he starts doing the table read, the first sketch, out of his butt, and his butt is right next to Keenan's head. And everybody laughs at first.
Was that a sketch? He ended up doing it in Ace Ventura, right? But he never did it as a sketch.
Yeah, he probably did. I think he did do it in Ace Ventura. And that was after he did it on Living Color, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Because he was writing that at In Living Color with Steve Oakert.
Got it.
So it didn't stick on In Living Color.
No, man. I'm telling you, it got quiet so fast after it was funny because Keenan was not fucking playing around. It was tense in there. And I was like, man, how long is he going to do it? Jim Carrey committed.
The whole bit.
He kept doing it.
Can you imagine doing that right in front of the showrunner's face?
In front of Keenan Ivory
you're just like
Wayans,
smacking
well, the good thing is he can't see him. Did he pull his pants down?
No.
Okay, he just did them.
No.
He just did like a dress rehearsal.
Yeah. It was funny too. I couldn't believe that he did it. It was
and
for the writers.
He had to have been yelling.
Yeah, well, you know, he's doing it. Let me show you something. You know, and he's doing that, but the butt is doing it real fast, you know, or whatever. So.
Okay, and then what sitcoms you write
Fire
for?
Marshal built through the butt. So, first one was Sister with T and Tamara Mowry, who are like reality stars now.
Yeah.
How long did you write there for?
2 seasons.
What did you like about? What made you want to leave In Living Color and then go there?
Well, it was time to move on. I always had goals of what I wanted to do, and 2 years in sketch was long enough.
Yeah,
and so I knew I needed to get to sitcoms, you know. So I got a job at Sister, and you know it was kind of a goofy type of sitcom. But I worked with Cy Rosen, who started on the original Bob Newhart show, and he was great. Working under him, you just learned everything about.
He was the head writer of Sister.
He was the showrunner, head writer.
And were you just a staff writer? Or
I started as story editor, and then I moved to executive story editor, co-producer. And I think when I left, I was a producer.
And you didn't mind writing, like, it's basically a family show, right?
No, well, you have to learn how to do it. You know, you have to learn the form. So it's really almost irrelevant what type of show you're working on in the beginning. You just want to get the experience of how to do it. How do you even put a 30-minute show together? You know, taking notes from the network, those types of things, show night. I mean, all of those things are skills that you need to learn before you can even aspire to try to write for something.
Yeah, what do you think the 5 most important things you learned? If you have because that's an interesting thing. Right. It is like it's act breaks, shit like that
Absolutely.
people don't even think about.
Rewriting is number one. It's the most important thing you have to learn as a writer in television, because my favorite expression that I made up, so it's my favorite. You can't reschedule Monday. Monday's coming whether you like it or not, right?
Right.
You got a show to put on. If you got to stay up all night Sunday, you got to do it.
Yeah.
And rewriting is one of the most critical things that you have to do at some points. When I did...
You're talking about multicam television.
I'm
right
talking
now.
about any kind of television, you know.
When you say you have a show, you mean you just...
Well, you may have to film the next
Right,
day. In a
right.
Yeah, I
single
mean,
camera.
Monday, even if
Yeah.
you're single camera, they're not going to go,
Right.
you know what, let's
we'll
push
take
it
this
down.
day off. Yeah, right.
No, it's coming. You have to get it ready. So you have to make critical decisions, you know, with a lot of pressure on your shoulders. So like there may be a decision where you may have to change an entire act. That requires a lot of critical thinking. Now that critical thinking comes from the skill of having done it. What should this act be? What's the best type of structure for this to be in order to get us to the third act? I mean, simple, bare questions like that. You're not even to the point of what's funny yet.
And do you have?
You know.
Do you feel like you had good instincts for that from stand-up and from In Living Color and from theater and all that?
Theater gave me the good instincts for that. Stand-up and In Living Color gave me the instincts to be fearless in pitching. So like most sitcoms, you pitch a story now and then. In Living Color, I was pitching every day, like 10 ideas. So I went in to pitch the sitcoms. The first day, I'm pitching like 13 stories ideas. Like, motherfucker, calm down. What's wrong with you? You know. So
the listeners know a lot of times the way that a writer's room will work on a show is there'll be a guy who's in charge and a group of writers sitting around the table, and they'll start pitching jokes, throwing them out, or pitching stories to. It's called what? Breaking stories.
Breaking stories, right?
So you know the episode that you just watched of Parks and Rec, or whatever. Somebody they wrestled that out around a table, and somebody said, "Well, I think maybe Amy Poehler goes to the doctor that day," and then somebody goes, "That's great. What if she goes to the OBGYN?" Blah 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 blah.
Right. That's one way that it's done. Sometimes.
And did you do it in a small, like you just pitched to the EP?
Yeah, on Sister, I was really lucky that I was able to work on several shows that were at the start, so I got to see how shows actually began, you know, right from the beginning. Sister was one of those, so I was able to contribute ideas in that beginning.
Who was your favorite sister? Sister or sister?
Sister was my favorite.
Great.
Well, I didn't like her, honestly. She had attitude.
She did have to, but that's why I liked her.
Yeah, all right, I get it.
She had sass.
She
and
had
you can't,
sass.
you know what? You
but
can't.
Sister was
Can't spell sass without ass is all I have to say.
And you can't reschedule sass.
She's
Sass is coming.
what, 13 and I'm saying ass, right? That's terrible.
Also, but we don't know who you're
hilarious.
talking
She's not
about.
13 anymore.
Domestic violence and 13-year-old.
No, she's not 13
That's what
anymore.
We're taken away from the podcast.
It's like when Pee Wee Herman was busted for having naked pictures of children that had been dead for like 100 years.
Really?
You didn't hear about that? After the movie
Dead
theater.
for 100 years.
What I'm saying is he had antique photos of naked children, but these were people that had grown up and died. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe he thought there was a statute of limitations.
Well, that must
It's a very bizarre
Did
idea.
he plead that?
He tried to, but it's illegal regardless, which is a very odd idea. These are like
bizarre.
people that became 80 and then died, and now it's like,
You know what's
no,
funny?
it's still
Someone
child
listening to
pornography.
this right now is like, wait a
clever.
minute.
Yeah, or
That
somebody,
sounds odd. Someone's Googling.
Man, they're
that.
not 6 anymore. They're 80.
No, yeah.
It's weird because they're old.
All right, so Sister for a couple years.
Right, Sister. Then I worked on Fresh Prince for a season. Actually, quit Fresh Prince.
How come?
Because it was a tough situation. Will's ex-manager.
The great Benny Medina.
No, it wasn't Benny.
No.
It was someone else. But he was running the show, and it was just a debacle. It was not good. And we were up late.
Oh, I think I know who it was.
Yeah. But Will was really cool and everything. I said, man, I can't work for your boy, man. I gotta go. And he was like, I ain't mad at you. You know, we had a good discussion about it. You know, I said, I just can't work like this. And so, and I've seen Will since. We've done stuff together. He's been great. You know, it wasn't like any big deal. It was the only job I ever quit.
How did you get your very first TV gig?
It was Into the Night with Rick Dees, actually.
How did you get it?
As a writer?
As a writer, yeah. Well, that job was just basically writing jokes for late night. So all I had to do was submit jokes.
And it was like a late night talk show?
It was a late night talk show. And a friend of mine was working on the show at the time, and they were looking for writers. And at that, I had just made the decision to start writing for TV. And I was pretty lucky. I made the decision in like 3 weeks later, I got a job. So I was very fortunate. And
so
then
you could
6
just
months
make a
later, I was
decision,
on
and
Living
then
Color.
you're like, I'm gonna work for TV, then you just get it.
That's how it works.
Is that how
for
it
me.
works?
That's
Actually,
nice.
That's how it works for everybody.
That's how my career has kind of worked, where I put it out there, and then somehow it just kind of, that door somehow opens, and I just have to recognize that's the door. You know?
That's nice.
Yeah, must be nice.
When you were around Will Smith, did you think to yourself, "Oh, this guy's got it to such a degree. He's going to be a huge, huge star"?
He was right on the verge. Men in Black had not come out yet, and
You're more of a Jazzy Jeff guy?
exactly.
Did you write When Jazzy Jeff Gets Thrown Out? Was that your idea?
No.
What
I
a
wish,
classic piece
I
of
wish I would have
television.
written more of the Fresh Prince classic stuff.
I was thinking it'd be funny now if you did a sitcom and you just had Jazzy Jeff on as a character.
And you threw him out.
Like, no, this is my friend Jeff. And you never explain why. Like, no, it's just my friend.
But
He's
you know what? Carlton is still wildly popular from that show. It's
Of course. Well, because he's
it's that dance.
And it's
that
also
dance.
it's also a type.
Yeah.
It's a snap. You'd be like, look at Carlton over here.
And the truth is,
and he was funny. He was funny.
He's a funny actor.
Yeah.
And the archetype of that guy doesn't mean as much anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's a white acting black guy. I feel like that's not, at the time in the early 90s, it was more of like a, whoa, look at that. And now I just feel like the culture, black culture, all cultures become so diffuse that it's less of a like wow, check it out or whatever.
Right.
But at the time, I think that's why it struck a chord. And Jazzy Jeff, by the way, is one of the best live DJs I've ever seen.
Him and Questlove
Incredible.
do live shows that are apparently bananas.
Genuinely incredible.
I believe it. All right, so Will, then you left there.
Then I did a show called The Show for a short time.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that? Maestro Clark.
Yeah, Maestro and
Do you know
Sam
Maestro?
Cedar.
And Sam Cedar, right.
Yeah.
Who's doing radio and stuff now.
Sam Cedar was I was roommates with him
Wow.
right after he did the show, and there was a joke
Which
from
show?
I have a
called.
good story from that show.
Okay, good. Well, tell yours.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh no. There was just a punchline. The show was about a white guy who was in
Right.
charge of a black sketch show.
Right.
So you would think like, oh, it's right
That's
up my
funny.
alley. Yeah.
Neil's like, I could never relate to that.
No, that should have been my
I'll
favorite.
never be able to
when people
relate
ask
to
me,
that.
what's your favorite sitcom? Seinfeld, The Cosby Show. I go, no, The Show.
Right, exactly.
There were 13 of them, but they're gems.
Right.
No, there was a joke where the black dudes there was like 7 black dudes in every
Right.
scene. 7 black dudes and Sam in every scene.
Right, exactly.
And one of the jokes was that they had rented movies, and the line was he came in and threw the movie down and goes, "Pladow, Porkies."
Wait, I may have written that.
Oh, no, that's what's great about it. Flat out Porkies.
That's
So
a
I
great
straight
joke.
up once a week, I will go like flat out Porkies
That's
to
a great
myself.
joke.
I actually may have written that joke.
That's a really good joke.
Put down Porkies. It sounds like something.
Flat out Porkies.
Flat
That was
out.
actually a fun show.
Was it?
Oh, and now here's the thing about it. This is how Hollywood works, all right? So John Bowman, who created the show, he created Martin. And
Yes.
John I knew from Living Color. And so he was looking for, there was the part of the sidekick to Sam. He was like this crazy writer. He was kind of out of control. And so John was watching tapes of people from New York, and he saw this one actor who he thought was great. You know, he was really funny, had a lot of energy, and Fox was like, well, he's not good looking enough for television.
Right.
That was their criterion, that
Sure.
he wasn't good looking.
Yeah.
They kept saying that. And John's like, well, can I just sign him to do the... and he had to let his contract elapse or something like that, right? And then they couldn't find anybody. And then he said, look, can I please have this guy? And they said, all right, fine, but we're still not sure about him. And so when he went back to the actor said, well, I'll only do the pilot. I really don't want to do the series. And John couldn't do anything at this point because he had to beg him to do the pilot, right? Because the actor was interested in doing other stuff. So he does the show, and he kills. He just destroys. He's like the funniest thing on the show.
This is for the white guy part.
This is for the white guy.
Right.
Not the Sam Cedar part. For Sam,
for the
Sam's
maestro.
sidekick.
For the white sidekick or the black sidekick?
The white sidekick. Oh, he was one of the writers in the writers room. I'm sorry.
Got it. Yeah.
And he was just this crazy white guy in the writers room, kind of afraid of black people and all this kind of stuff.
Got
you
it.
know? But he was really funny. He said, "No, sorry, I can't do anymore. I just want to do the pilot." Everybody was fucked. Paul Giamatti.
I was going to guess that.
You were going to guess
Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti?
Yeah.
Right.
Because Paul Giamatti, that was like when he did the Howard Stern movie.
Right. It's right before
That's
that,
when he
yeah.
first started popping.
He would have made that show stay on the air because he was so hilarious in that part. I mean, he was hilarious. And just seeing him on stage and just going crazy, the audience just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah, that's one of those funny things, like just be great in everything. And eventually it'll pay off. All right, so...
Not good looking enough for television.
I mean, fair enough.
No, that's not incorrect.
For comedy.
Oh, no, that's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so then you left the show.
So I left the show, and now I'm trying to piece it all together. So then I knew that I needed to make that next leap. Right. So I've always kind of guided my career in that way, where it's like, okay, you got to do this and you got to go forward. And so I knew
Are you ambitious? You're just a naturally ambitious guy, or you're more curious and you want to?
It's not so much
That's a great question.
Ambitious. It's just like I have things that I want to do, and there's certain things that have to be done in order to do it. Right. So, like, I'm not running the show now. I don't miss it,
Right.
But at the time, I needed. It's really hard. Tell me about it. But at the time, I needed to do that in order to get to that point of creating my own thing. So that was the goal, right? So I ended up. I did a pilot with a couple of guys from The Simpsons, and from that, I was able to get. Let's see, was that before? No, maybe I did the Jamie Foxx show first. I may have done that first.
Sitcom.
Yeah, the sitcom. I think I did that, and. I'm trying to piece it all together, but I know I ended up getting a deal with Disney.
And were you were you the EP of Jamie's show? Or you were just
I was just a writer. Just a writer. And I got an overall deal with Disney, and from there I created the show The PJs.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. And how did that come about?
The PJs came about. Nena Rodriguez, who was an exec, called me up and asked me if I wanted to do an animated show with Eddie Murphy. And I'm like, Nena, I don't want to do a cartoon. I mean, it sounded like she was talking about a cartoon.
An animated show with Eddie Murphy, and you were still like, nah.
I'm like, what the fuck? I just got this deal. I want to do, I'm thinking of the next. I didn't know she meant a primetime show.
Right. Oh, you thought she meant like Saturday morning.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, why do I want to do that shit?
Yeah.
Because he had just done Nutty Professor, or that kind of stuff, So, but then when I talked to her more, she said, yeah, he wants to do something different on TV. He's, he and Brian Grazer were talking about it. He had just worked with Brian Nutty Professor, and so I called my buddy.
Eddie Murphy is.
I gotta be careful. So I called my buddy Steve Tompkins, who worked on In Living Color with me. He had worked on The Simpsons and The Critic a little bit to do it with me. And we went and met with Eddie, and we hit it off. And he said, yeah, let's do it.
Had you never met Eddie before?
Never met him. Never.
And what was your experience with him like?
So the Eddie experience, that was interesting because that was a combination Eddie experience, and it was working with Ron Howard and Brian Grazer, which was kind of heady. And you had Will Vinton Studios, Disney, Fox. There were all kinds of entities going on.
Right.
But Eddie, let me tell you something. I had newfound respect for Eddie when I met him. I knew Eddie was funny, but you don't know how funny Eddie is until you actually meet him. You say, wow, he is the funniest guy.
Yeah, it's not even. That's the thing is, it's not even close when you meet him. The minute you meet him, you're just like, he'll make one joke, and you're like, motherfucker.
What has he done?
No, but
what do you mean?
I mean, what? He obviously was the preternatural, most funny person in the world. What happened?
He
was
did
it just
Delirious,
bad choice
Raw,
after bad choice
Delirious
after bad choice?
And Raw.
No, I'm not asking you what his credits are. I mean, what happened to Eddie Murphy?
He just has a lot of money, and also it's hard to know. The other thing, when you're that funny, you think you can make anything funny.
Right.
I think you kind of go like, they want to put the money up. They're going to pay me my quote.
Right.
No, and I'm not trying to talk shit either. I'm just genuinely curious. Like a guy with a brilliant comedic mind like that, why does he choose?
I'm telling you, because
at this point in the game, why not now go?
Here's the thing: talent doesn't mean you have taste.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same thing.
Right. But I don't think. But I don't think Eddie has bad taste.
I mean,
meaning he's picked bad scripts, but at the same time, when there's a very finite amount of movies that are even that the studios are willing to produce.
Right.
The list isn't long at all, and if you're like, he makes $20 million a movie, that's a big nut.
That's a big nut. That's a big nut.
And if it's like, okay, I make $20 million a movie, I haven't done shit in a while. And they're offering you Pluto Nash, and you go, yeah, I've never done an alien movie. Because that's the thing about Eddie, he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of movies. Like he can quote fucking every movie, old movies, new movies, and so you just go, yeah, I guess they're offering me this, and this. That one's not ready. That one's not ready. So then you do one. And then while you're doing Norbit, somebody else makes. I mean, he wrote Norbit though, but
Norbit was kind of
Norbit
funny,
was, but even the premise of Norbit, I remember.
What was
him
Norbit
and Charlie
again?
wrote it. Him and Charlie wrote it. It was, here's the pitch. Eddie Murphy plays a guy whose wife abuses him.
Right.
And the wife is also played by Eddie Murphy.
Right.
You hear that and you go, oh, that's fucking hilarious.
Exactly.
but then it becomes, that's a funny idea for a movie. A guy who gets beat up.
Charlie at the time we were developing the PJs too, around '97, and he told me many of those stories that
that we ended up doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, he
hilarious.
Yeah,
I watched it. I said, "This is true. This is true."
Yeah, Chris Rock said the same.
Charlie's very funny.
He's hilarious. But no, so with Eddie, you just get, and then it's like you smoke. I don't know. He just is into his shit.
Yeah.
He's got $200 million.
Yeah.
Right.
And
no, I mean, I'm not saying it's unenviable, his position. You just wonder when you have a brilliant comedic mind, how you can do 10 bad movies in a row.
It's got to be difficult, because one of it is volume. You're doing a lot of movies, and it's hard to keep. I think it's got to be really hard to keep that up. I'm giving him slack because I know how funny he is.
I know how, and I'll give him slack because he can't really play a cop again.
Right.
He played. He's known for being Axel Foley, the coolest cop, arguably
you have
ever.
to play that young.
So and I've actually seen him talk about the movies he's picked, and he goes, he was looking at, and he goes, I don't know if people are gonna think I can play bitch.
Right.
In Nutty Professor, but I can't play a vampire.
But by the way,
he literally is like, I don't fucking know what people are going to want me to do. I can play anything.
But he had a run of like these amazing films. 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Here's what I'll say to that.
I would argue he had amazing success, not necessarily amazing films.
Harlem Nights was so good, and Coming to America was so good.
Coming to America is a fucking masterpiece. I actually think Boomerang's I think it's the best black romantic comedy ever. I think it's really the only one.
Oh, I see you haven't. Someone hasn't seen Why Did I Get?
What did you say? Cotton Comes to Harlem?
Yeah, someone hasn't seen it.
You know what I have, and it's a total piece of garbage. Cotton Comes to Harlem.
You haven't seen Why Did I Get Married?
2. I saw 2.
No, you saw number 2.
No. Well, the other
movies like Cotton Comes to Harlem, for us, we were like, thank you.
No, I know.
Red Fox is in a movie.
Yeah. No, I had that conversation with a bunch of people about. They were talking about Uptown Saturday Night, and I go, Uptown Saturday Night's not a good movie. And they were like, how fucking dare you? All black people are like, fuck you. Get the fuck out of here. You can't even talk. And I go, what's the story of Uptown Saturday Night? And Chris Spencer goes, the story is black people made a movie.
Exactly. It's true.
I know, but it's not good enough.
But then you have movies like Sounder, which are good movies.
I don't know. I haven't seen Killer Sheep, and I haven't seen Sounder.
Sounder's good.
What is Sounder?
That was what was Sounder?
It was the story was black people made a movie.
Yeah, no, I can't remember.
The Color Purple, and comedy classics like this.
Well, no, but I'm talking about any black man,
Yeah.
So, but so with Eddie, it's like, what's he gonna? The 48 Hours was the only movie he got offered.
Right.
You know what I mean? Beverly Hills Cop was
It wasn't first choice for either of those movies.
No, exactly. And they just come to you, and it's like you got to get lucky. So.
Right.
But I think Eddie's a brilliant. He's it's like he's
brilliant.
fucking.
He's my favorite comedian of all time.
Above and beyond.
I'm not saying anything negative about his in fact, just the opposite.
Right, but I feel like if you met him, you would come away kind of going like, all right.
He's very soft-spoken. My favorite Eddie moment, it was at the table read for the PJs. First table read, right? Everybody's there. Head of the network, Imagine. You got Ron Howard, all those guys. We're real excited. The whole cast is there. And right before the table read, and we were concerned if Eddie would even show up, and I was all ready to do the part in case I had to read it because, in animation, you're always reading all the parts and all that stuff. And so Eddie shows up, whew. But then after a while, I look around and he's not there, and I'm like, "What the fuck?"
Wait, did he do?
Was it in the middle of the read?
I'm like, no, the table read hasn't started. I'm like, was it Eddie's ghost? What happened?
Right.
What did I see? And then I heard that I think he got a little, gun shy or something, And I realized, I thought about it. I said, oh, fuck. He hasn't had a table read in like 20 years.
Yeah.
Since Saturday Night Live. That was in the early 80s. And I thought, well, of course he's going to be a little nervous. I think he was a little nervous. I think somebody went and talked to him. And then he came back, killed them. Just killed at the table. It was one of the funniest. It was one of the best experiences to sit at a table and hear Eddie Murphy read the PJs for the first time.
But don't you find even when you're talking to him in conversation, you want to record it?
Yes, exactly.
You're just like, I can't fucking believe I'm talking to Eddie Murphy.
I know.
And he's just talking about like, oh, this is a delicious piece of food or whatever. You're like, what?
Moshe, here's the analogy. This is how people used to consider Bob Saget before they knew he was funny. Like, if you didn't work in a comedy club and you just saw Bob Saget in Full House, you go, why would people think that he's funny? But if you knew him in the comedy club, you realize how hilarious he really was. So it was like...
But, yes, that's the analogy.
Kind of an analogy.
Yeah, right. But if Bob had started with...
Right, that's true.
If your introduction to him was him and the Aristocrats...
right, exactly.
And then he ended up doing...
I always say Aristocats. I always say that because of the movie.
Yeah. So then you did what?
PJs. So that...
And was that was 2 seasons?
Yeah, we did 2 seasons of it, and I think they did a half season after we left.
Did you left?
Yes, Steve and I left.
Steve
Tompkins, the other showrunner creator, the show moved from Fox to the WB, and we were just ready to move on. And Eddie left the show too. We didn't.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, we didn't want to do it.
Let me ask you this question, just as an aside, and we'll get back to the timeline.
Sure.
But you spent.
I like this timeline. This is great.
Yeah.
I can follow it.
Yeah, it's your timeline.
I know.
It sounds to me, from listening to the different things that you worked on, that you've spent the majority of your career talking about black shit.
Right.
And your the majority of your projects were connected to black culture, and then when it was your own project, it was still connected to your own race.
Right.
Does that still feel like, I guess, why, and does it still feel as fulfilling as it ever did, and what keeps that going and even your position on the Daily Show is what is that, the role of that for you?
Well, it's always been a perspective that I've had, because I've always kind of been an insider outsider. I went to schools with predominantly whites, or Mexicans, and I always felt like I was at a family reunion, not in the family type of thing. I was always having to explain.
That's a great way to put it.
Explain my blackness or talk about my blackness. So it was always I was always
like, Larry, let me have a question. You're like, oh, fuck.
I was always aware.
It was like one long ass podcast.
Yeah, exactly right. And things were kind of changing in the culture a lot too. I was born in 1961, so when I was growing up, that was, Martin Luther King's assassinated during my childhood. And that civil rights movement had moved on to the Black Power movement, had moved on to the thug rap movement.
That was me. That's where I came in.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so I was, to me, like I would do a joke, I talk about this now, how people would say you don't talk black, And I always thought, well, what does that mean? What it really means is you don't talk black slang, but black slang people say is black, which doesn't make sense to me, because Martin Luther King said, yo, I got a dream, bitch. I mean, he never said that, but the German Shepherds knew he was black.
Right.
Right.
Well, they were trained. They were great.
So so that notion of you have to be in constant in popular culture to be black is, I don't understand that. It doesn't make sense. Where when I was a kid, black meant a whole lot of different things.
Well, that's what it is. Funny, black has changed. Right. Meaning probably 5 times in a major way in your lifetime.
Right. I remember I once had a conversation with somebody where I said something like that, something about someone talk, and he implied, it was like, oh, that's racist. What do you mean he doesn't talk like street? And I at the time was just embarrassed and let it go. And then I started thinking about it, that isn't a necessary 1-to-1 correlation. That's a kind of, but that's really more hip hop, and hip hop kind of cracked black culture into all these other races that are involved in it and are using the same black slang. But when I think of Martin Luther King's voice, I think that sounds like a black voice to me. Does that make sense?
That is essentially the black experience.
Well, Martin Luther King's father was a Republican. Very conservative. They're very religious people, very educated. Today he would not be considered authentically black with those credentials.
Yeah, no, you're right. No doubt. I'm saying
his way of getting out of the ghetto was through education and family values.
Although you could make a case that he was so churchy.
He was very churchy.
He would have been authentically
his
black.
Churchiness would
have
That's what I would say. It's either street. It's either the street or the church. Like that's sort of the two main identities.
Right.
But do you find it difficult to? I mean, Moshe's question about do you find it tiring or do you find it repetitive? Do you find that these sort of massive cultural shifts? Do you find it like, oh, here's another way in which this is being misinterpreted?
Is it still creatively nourishing to you after all these years?
And I found it's a great question. There's always something new to say. It seems like. I mean, I can look back at my stand-up. I did some things, of course, in Living Color. The PJs, which is more of a satire of the whole culture. I mean, because we did jokes in the PJs I don't do now. We had one joke where the kid says, he looks at Juicy, he says, Juicy, I hope we never grow up. And Juicy says, well, Calvin, the statistics are in our favor.
That's
and
funny.
laugh. And that's a hard-hitting joke.
Yeah, that is a really tough joke.
It is a tough joke, but it's, I love writing. I like finding those little truths. We had a crackhead on the show. I mean, who puts a crackhead on the show? And to me, that was Otis the Drunk. It was Jim from Taxi.
Sure.
He had that lineage. So, and I remember I had to have a meeting with the NAACP who really objected to the show, and I was trying to defend it, and they were like, and I said, they said, yeah, they're drinking alcohol. I said, yeah, but, the premier Family Guy had just come out at the time we premiered. I said, the Family Guy, the father, he drinks like a whole can of something, he passes out on the table. And they said, yeah, but yours is real. I said, they're puppets.
Yeah, they're made of clay.
Crackheads?
Real, yeah. So it was,
that's funny.
I always having to defend.
Stay in college.
But Smokey was my favorite character to have a crackhead on the show. And my favorite line was, well, Super, gotta go. Crack don't smoke itself.
Peeps, stay in college.
Funny because it's true.
Well, that's funny
the crack.
because
so it's endlessly fascinating.
But that's an interesting thing with that NAACP meeting that that it can't. And I understand this as a Jew. There's that
NAACP thing. I wanted to do a sketch on Chappelle's
did
show.
you guys have to?
Of course.
Right.
We didn't real. I didn't. But I wanted to do a sketch called, which was the NAACP action movie, where nothing happened.
Uh-huh.
They were just like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to seem.
Right.
It's all this thing of like, I don't want to seem.
Frozen, right.
It's the idea that when you're the only, I get that they're the only image.
Yeah.
That's and that's the thing with black culture is there's only 4 or 5 black shows at a time. Now there's
That's exactly
none.
right. That's what I was going to say is that it can't stand like you making the analogy of Family Guy. The idea is but that's about white. That's white. Every show is white people, so it doesn't matter what they're doing.
Yeah.
We only have these many shows, so you have to do this for us.
Well, here's the thing. When we talked about how the culture's changed, like black humor, a lot of people associate black humor as very bawdy. It's very much about sex, Def Comedy Jam. It's
fucking. We call it stool fucking.
Right. It fits into like one brand now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't always like that. I mean, in the 60s, you had all different types of comics who were black. You had Bill Cosby, who was a storyteller. You had Flip Wilson, who was more of an old-style vaudeville type of comic. Godfrey Cambridge was a hipster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Red Fox was your party, your party jokes type comic.
Right.
Is what they called it then. Your
Red Fox.
And Richard Pryor was opening up a whole new door to what he was doing. So you had many different styles of black comics, and you had Dick Gregory, who was a political comic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He'd be your Bill Maher or that.
Wouldn't they not all be considered a little dangerous though?
What do you mean?
Meaning, like, I feel like if you listen, there was something like if you had a Dick Gregory record, I feel like it'd be like, ooh, I have a Dick Gregory record. I have a Red Fox record. Ooh, I have a Richard Pryor record. Ooh, like
what do you
they
mean?
were all
Not Dick Gregory, only Red Fox, because back then it was only if something was considered dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like what I mean is like if for white people to have these records would be like a bit like, ooh, play it after midnight. Kind of like,
do you think comedy's getting back to that? Because there is a new crop of like, I mean, I have always taken offense to white alternative comics, which is kind of the world that I live in, talking about Def Jam as if it's a negative adjective, like, oh, that's Def Jam. Like,
exactly.
I don't need to even further explain. I'm like, that's some of the best shit that's ever happened, so fuck you. Yeah.
It is. A lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, Bernie Mac is one of the funniest guys
forget
ever.
It. His Def Jam was the greatest
It was
thing
one of the best ever, funniest things on television ever, in fact, So, yeah, I agree with that. And my whole thing was that we don't have to be monolithic either. It doesn't have to be just one brand. It's that, are white people the only people who can think differently, have different types of thoughts? So niggas all got to think like this, I mean, it doesn't make sense.
But now you've got, I mean, you've been around, but there's, Hannibal and Wyatt and a lot of Bear and Vaughn and Bertunde and like there's and W. Kamau Bell and people who are a lot of like W. Kamau Bell is a very political guy. And so I feel like there's a diffusement.
I think Chris
in there too.
helped open that. Dave did too.
Right.
With Dave's style, because Dave to me is an intellectual raw comedian.
Yeah.
his stuff is so well thought through, you know. It has
you almost don't realize it because it's so well performed.
Very sly, yeah.
And it's also really like he can do voices and shit, so you don't.
It can be ignorant sometimes
too.
His
stuff is very smart.
His stuff can be dumb too. Like, he loves permission to be dumb.
He loved no one. We used to have fights. I'd be fighting not to do poop jokes.
Right.
He'd be like, "Shit, poop is funny, man."
Right, and poop is funny.
It's like Woody Allen always did dick jokes.
Yeah.
Always, all of his movies, you see dick jokes all the time. But anyhow.
Talk about Bernie Mac show.
So Bernie Mac show, I was looking to do another new show, and I had to deal with Regency at the time, and I saw Kings of Comedy, and I wanted to do a show. I wanted to do something that was different. Reality was just starting. Real World had been big popular. I think Survivor had just been on. And so I wanted, there was a show called 1900 House. And it was this reality show about this family that had to live as if it was 1900.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
It was very cool. And they had cameras set up in the house. And I thought, man, that's real interesting. What if we did a show where you just rigged cameras in the house? And the action just seemed real. Instead of being pushed towards us, you know, it felt like we were eavesdropping.
Right.
You know, because, and remember, at that time, there were no single camera shows. Everything was multicam. So everything just felt forced, you know. The only single camera show, I think, was Malcolm in the Middle at the time. And so I thought of doing a show like that. And then when I saw Kings of Comedy, I thought, man, that story of Bernie taking care of those kids would be a nice emotional story to drop in this kind of situation. Right. So I kind of married those two together, and I pitched it to Bernie, and he really liked it. He thought it was good. And then I pitched it to Fox, and they bought it, and ended up.
But I never really thought of it as a reality show.
Well, it was. I mean, Bernie talked to the camera.
Right.
You know, he broke the fourth wall. He had a confessional, which to me the confessional was made up more like the 1900 House confessional, where he confessed his sins to us.
Right.
And it more represented his emotional through line in the show. More than it was for expositions.
That always felt more theatrical to me than confessional.
Right. Exactly. Well, it was like that on purpose. But the show had an unexpectedness about it. Like in the pilot, what's funny is that I'm kind of all over the place. But when we were doing the pilot, Ken Kwapis, who was the director, we did things like we watched French New Wave films and things like that, because we were really looking at. I wanted to have a different cutting style, and I needed the rhythms to be a little irregular. And so I wrote this in the pilot where Bernie is talking to us about one of the kids, and then we hear him crying, and Bernie's like, wait a minute. And then he leaves, and we don't know he's leaving, so the camera just stays there. And it just stays there, and we hear him off camera, and it stays an extra long beat, and then we cut. So I wanted to have that feeling that we didn't know this was going to happen.
Right.
And then we cut, and then when we're there, when we come back, we got back a little too soon, and then he enters. You know?
And did anybody argue with you about that?
No.
Did you guys get coverage of the beginning of the baby conversation?
No, there was none of that stuff. It was
that's interesting.
Yeah,
nobody messed with us at all.
Coverage meaning they didn't film that part,
right?
Like, so that Fox couldn't. Fox couldn't force you to put it in.
No.
I heard
we wouldn't have done it.
I heard an interesting.
But Fox never liked the show.
But it was successful, right?
Didn't matter.
Yeah, but they just didn't like it.
Yeah.
Didn't you get fired?
I
or you
got fired
left?
in the second season after I won an Emmy, a Peabody Humanitas, Television Critics Award,
a
Golden
Nobel
Globe nomination, everything you could possibly win.
Space Award.
You're the Dan Harmon of Bernie Mac show.
Oh, the Community?
Except
I don't know
he
if won
shitloads of awards.
The difference was a brother wins awards and gets ratings and
gets fired.
And they say it's not good enough. And I remember at the time Arrested Development did not get ratings. You know, did not get those, and they kept rewarding him with more money and stay.
What do you think they didn't like about it?
You know, in my mind, I always said we had creative differences. I was creative and they were different. So I actually used that line in the press, you know, right when I was getting fired. But I think it was an ego pull at first. You know, they didn't really understand it. The head of the network at the time was Sandy Grushow. And he just never understood it. He didn't know why it was funny. He didn't understand why people thought it was funny. And he thought it needed to be more like a traditional sitcom, which I fought. Like they wanted the wife to be snappy and snazzy and have these lines. I said, no, she's a real woman. She's not.
No. She's black. She's black. She's not a real woman.
She talks like a real person. She doesn't talk in jokes like that, you know. And so I always had to fight for those types. And my storytelling was very different. Each week I might choose a different stylist storytelling, just because that's the nature of the story. There was one story where each act was the same thing over, but from a different perspective.
Yeah, like Rashomon.
Exactly, you know. Yeah. And there was another story we would have fantasy elements and things like that, you know. there was one that I loved. It was called Hot, 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 and it was just hot. There was really no plot, it was, but it was following Bernie's emotional journey through the episode.
Right. Well, you know what's cool about Comedy Central is they didn't understand Chappelle's show and they just admitted it.
Yes, exactly.
They literally, after 6 episodes, they actually said, we don't understand the show, so do whatever you want.
That's how Fox feels about The Simpsons.
Yeah.
I heard them say that. We don't understand it, but they're geniuses. We'll let them do what they want.
Yeah. But they wouldn't give you that. Because you guys were getting good numbers too, right?
Yep.
What is so hard? I don't understand what that even means. What do they not understand?
They don't we did a real world sketch where it was usually the real world's one black guy with all white people, and we did the reverse.
Right, I remember that.
All right.
That was very funny.
A executive Comedy Central who we all know because she's also a comedian said, this is a bunch of unfunny scenes back to back. It's literally she didn't even understand that the concept of a black dude being isolated around all these white people would be crazy, would make him crazy, and so doing the opposite would be funny.
Right.
She literally didn't understand it.
Yeah, if you don't get that.
And so Dave does the sketch. Dave sets the sketch up.
I know.
The setup got a fucking applause break.
That's hilarious.
At the taping, and I got in her face afterward, and I go, I fucking heard what you said about that sketch. She goes, Neal, get away from me. And I was so fucking crazy by it. It just made me crazy. Like, we wrote this sketch, we shot it, we fucking worked our ass up, and then you just go, it's a bunch of unfunny scenes back to back. And after that sketch, they said, we literally don't understand.
It's mind-boggling because the person you're talking about, if it is who I think it is a very funny person.
Yeah.
Is a very funny comedian.
But it just never occurs to someone that...
Maybe it dulls your brain to be an executive. Because that's the whole thing that, like, for the people listening, like, it's always, the network is always giving notes, and sometimes it feels like they're giving notes arbitrarily so that they can have given a note.
I think it was truly not understanding how isolating... it's a very broad concept, but I don't think she understood the isolation of being black.
Right. It sounds like.
I honestly, I really think she didn't. Now this is a totally
That's when you
separate.
Take them to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffle.
Leave.
And then they get it. They go, boy, there's a lot of black people.
Yeah.
Well, what's your problem? Well, now you know how I fucking feel every day.
At IHOP.
I'm Neal Brennan. This is how I feel every day. Actually, your life was that real world
hilarious.
sketch.
I had a separate, the opposite of that.
Well, thanks.
Ian Edwards, who's been on the show, black dude, said that he didn't like Catcher in the Rye because it just seemed like a white dude complaining. Thank you. And I said, like, I get it.
Right.
But that's what white isolation
feels like. To clarify, he said Catcher in the Rye, not Casher in the Rye.
Yes,
my book.
That's the name.
That's the name of my book. That's the name of my book.
Moshe Kasher.
Yeah, my last name's Kasher.
That's great.
Thank you.
Well, you know what? The civil rights movement had, the 60s movement had two parts to it. You had disaffected white youth, and you had the black civil rights movement.
Right.
Those weren't necessarily over.
Right.
They were mad at the same person for different reasons.
We didn't want to go to the war for different reasons.
Right.
Than you want to.
They were cousins, but they weren't.
Muhammad Ali's reasons for not wanting to go to the war was not a disaffected youth who had ennui from his middle class lifestyle.
Right.
Yeah. I have a theory about Muhammad Ali.
I heard a fascinating story about the Australian guy in the Black Power picture from the Olympics.
Right.
The white guy that's getting bronze or silver or whatever, and he's not raising his hand, but he's
there's no way he got gold. Go ahead.
He's right. Oh God, no, but he was actually wearing a patch in solidarity, some sort of human rights solidarity patch and he became like the hero of black people in America, and he was ostracized and destroyed back in Australia. When he went back home for like 30 years, he couldn't compete, he couldn't train, he couldn't be in and he just got a public apology from the Australian government this year.
Yeah, it turns out you were right.
Yeah.
But he was the Mike Myers of his day. They were the Kanye. And he was like, what the fuck is going on? Wait, what?
Sorry. What were you saying?
We haven't seen Mike Myers since, but we've seen Kanye.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so then, all right, so that goes to, now when you got fired, I'm sure you got a big payout and all that shit. No?
Nope. Fired.
They
I had a 2-year contract at the time, so it was at the end of the 2-year contract. So technically, they didn't pick me up to continue with the show. There was no big deal.
But you still must have had an ownership stake.
Oh yeah. But there was no payout up front. There was nothing. Like that.
There was no severance.
No reward.
Right.
That shit boggles my mind. The idea of a showrunner creator getting fired from his own idea.
Well, they act like I had nothing to do with it. Like I was somehow screwing up somebody else's thing.
They gave you this ship.
It's
you didn't
ridiculous.
build the ship.
It makes no sense at all.
It's crazy to me to think of having your own like Dan. That is analogous to Dan Harmon. You create a thing. It's from your brain, and then they take it away from you and give it to another person.
Yeah.
They have no idea, and they have no idea the amount of work it took to just do that,
and how personal it is.
Exactly.
Right. Did you? Okay, so then you after that, what were you doing?
So then that's a big crossroads for me because now I'm thinking, okay, I've come this far. Now what do I want to do?
You must have had some money by now, right?
Well, I was successful from when I started at Rick D's.
From the 3 weeks after you decided to be successful.
That's exactly right.
So you had a period of...
You're not authentically black.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Exactly. My period of struggle was about a week and a half long.
Yeah. Success and articulateness can only be had by white people. Right?
That is the premise of our podcast.
Got to be ignorant.
Yeah.
But I consider myself successful when I was making $10 a week.
Right.
So there you go. But
I have some bad news. Nobody else did. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, people are interested in the money that you're making in that.
I know.
It's kind of. So how much did you make?
No, I know. People always wonder about. But I'm saying it as a guy. When you said crossroads, I assume that you had a bit of money and you were like, "What do I want to do?"
Right. Well, I wasn't quite in that position because remember I was working all the time, but I never got like a big payout, a big deal, or
I like them greenbacks
they were getting in those days, But I did okay. But it isn't like you think. I didn't get those big $20-30 million. It wasn't like that.
But you must have gotten some significant checks from Bernie after a while.
Actually, in the last few years,
right?
When started. But so at the time, I was looking for a job, just like anybody else. But I ended up signing an overall deal with NBC. And I ran the Whoopi show for about 6 months.
Right.
Whoopi who?
Okay.
Come on.
And and then I was developing I did a pilot called Beverly Hills SUV, a sport utility vehicle for NBC. And that actually went really well. Didn't get on there. And then they asked if I would consult on The Office. And then when I did The Office, I worked in that the first 3 seasons. I did the Diversity Day, and I decided, maybe I should start performing.
You wrote
again. Well, we all wrote. You know how that works. But B.J. Novak, I think, actually penned that particular episode. But I was in it,
Yeah.
And so I thought maybe I should start performing again. Maybe now's the time.
How long had it been since you'd been doing stand-up regularly at that point?
Well, I did it spottily here and there, but I really hadn't done it in about, that was 2004, maybe 10 years.
Okay.
Since 93, 94. So it had been 10 years.
So you did that episode, and then you decided I'm going to try and get back on stage and be a creative entity of...
Not so much on stage, but in front of the camera.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I did a pilot for CBS the next year as an actor.
You sold it?
No, I did as an actor.
You auditioned?
They actually asked me to do it. I turned it down like 3 times because I was busy doing something else. And so I said, okay, all right, I'll come in. I said, my career goes like this. I said, well, I'll do it if it's not a regular role. Like what actor says things like that?
Yeah, right.
And then people want to throw you stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm serious when I say that because my mind is on doing something else, right? So I ended up doing it, and Ed O'Neill's in it, Christine Baranski, Kristen Ritter. It was this great cast, It was called Inseparable. It was multicam. And
you were better than all of them.
No. They were funny. I got some good laughs. But it ended up not going. And after that, I signed with 3 Arts, and we talked about, what do you want to do? And so I came up with the plan of kind of having one road as an actor, creator, maybe creating my own show, and the other road as doing my stand-up again and going towards doing a talk show eventually. So it was that thought in mind. And then... and I thought, well, I can't really do a talk show. No, I haven't even done stand-up in a while. I don't even have an audience right now. I'm not even sure what my voice is. I've been writing for other people for so long,
Right.
And so Dave Miner came up with the idea, well, what if maybe the Daily Show might be a good thing to do, And I thought, oh, that might be kind of cool. It'd be a way to kind of reestablish a connection with the audience and that kind of thing. And that's how the Daily Show came about, actually.
They pitched you. They were looking for a black guy, or
they weren't looking for anybody really. But Ed Helms had just left. In fact, I went to the Daily Show and Ed Helms came over to the office, kind of crossed. And Rob Corddry was leaving. Colbert had left the year before. So a lot of people were leaving. So the week that I went over there, Oliver had just started, Riggle had just started, Asamambi had just started, all in the same time. So they were looking to change things up a little bit.
Right.
And I met with John, and people kind of knew me from being a writer and producer.
Yeah.
So that was the reputation I had going in. So they figured I could just write my own bits.
Right.
So I was kind of more attractive there. I never even auditioned. I auditioned on the air, basically.
Did you write your own bits?
Yeah, I did. I wrote the, and then you end up writing with the writer from the show too. But it wasn't very good when the first one that I did, in the sense that it was too stiff. Because you have all those great people in your head. You have Colbert and those people. You have fake correspondent in your head, as opposed to like what you were talking about earlier, your own voice coming out and being yourself, right? And it's hard not to have them. They're fantastic, right? So in the rehearsal, I'll never forget this. I was supposed to do 2 pieces because I was living in L.A., and they were going to show one later, and the rehearsal got death. I mean, and you could tell people aren't even looking at you. It's like when you don't want to name the farm animals because you might eat them later, so you don't want to get too close. It was like that. We don't want to even know who this guy is. I could feel people not even wanting to acknowledge that I was in the room, and I could tell it was going bad. And I found out that they were going to cut one of them. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm getting fired before I even start.
Yeah.
You know? And then John was so cool. Before each show, I didn't know that he does a final rewrite. You know. And so what I was able to do was, during that rewrite, just me and John, I was just able to just put it more in my own words. And
was it partly from desperation?
Oh, all that, man. I thought it was over. I swear to God. I thought it was
such
over.
a toxic.
So was it just kind of like, fuck it? Was it like I got nothing to lose?
I thought they were being nice to me because they were feeling sorry for me, you know, and I just thought, I'm never going to do this show again, all this stuff. So, you know, and I'm just, at this point, I'm just putting in my own words, trying to be funny, make John laugh, whatever. And so then right before we go out, when we're sitting there, because it was during a commercial, then I come out, John just looks at me and he says, Larry, just look in the camera, just fucking give it to America, man.
Yeah.
And that was the nicest thing he could have said to me, you know, just completely relaxed me. And the first thing I did got a huge laugh. And now my stand-up comic instincts take over. I'm like, okay, now I got you. So now I'm starting to just really feel it and pouring it on. And it just killed. I mean, it just destroyed him. Yeah. And now the crew's like, well, when they let this guy in, you know? And plus, my natural persona is if I'm not on, then I'm kind of quiet. Because especially if I don't know people, I'm a little shy and I don't talk much. So I wasn't being Robin Williams on the set. Or that. So not only was I not funny, I was quiet about it too, you know, in between. So then when I got these big laughs, it was like a big shock. So that was real fortunate.
That's great. What good story.
What was the first one you did?
I auditioned on the air. Just think how nerve-wracking that is.
Yeah, I can. And then all right. So you just.
So the first bit was about the guy George Allen who made the macaca statement.
Right.
And I was able to really. I caught what the voice of what I should be talking about. One of the things I didn't want to do the opposite. Remember you talked earlier about like black Republican or the black guy sounding white. I didn't want to just do the opposite of something. Right. You know, and I didn't want to at the same time just do the regular black point of view on something too. And my natural point of view is just a contrarian. You know, I just like to think of something in a way we haven't thought of it yet, you know, and find the truth in that too. Right. So that's what we kind of stumbled upon. And that became my kind of persona. Like, so I'm kind of confounding your expectations as I'm asking.
Well, that's where being a writer comes in handy. It's like when people audition for stuff,
it wouldn't have been found for.
They don't realize. It's like when someone auditions for SNL. It's like you have to, in order to make other comedians laugh and to make an audience, smart audience laugh, you have to have thought about comedy, and you have to have created, even naturally come to like a unique point of view, and knowing what's a unique point of view, going like, I'm not gonna do the simple step of being opposite.
Right. That's fascinating because how would a random person know what had been trod over.
Yeah, well, and that's
you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know what hack was. How would you know what hack was? You didn't hear anything.
Yeah, you're new to. You can always tell, like when you watch at audition or something, or even you go to a comedy show and you just go, "Oh, this guy hasn't been doing it that long," or he just doesn't know he doesn't know not to do that.
Or sometimes I'll look, not to put down Saturday Night Live, but sometimes a lot of the black performers I'll feel sorry for there because I know they're walking into a situation where somebody's writing something for them, and it's the black guy.
Yeah,
and it's not investigated. That point of view doesn't have a lot of investigation in it. It's just surfacey.
Or it's Fred Armisen playing the president.
Yeah, that's bizarre, huh? So, okay, so you did the Daily Show, and you got and that started to become a thing, and then you
it
got
took
back
off right away. Yeah.
And you got back onto the, are we?
And I had left the office to do the Daily Show, so I went from office. So I made that transition of really being a full-time writer to really dedicating myself back to performing and crafting whatever.
And you were like a straight-up correspondent the way...
No, I was always a contributor. So I was always doing other projects at the time. I wrote a book during that time. I started doing stand-up again, lecturing at colleges, things like that. Huge pay cut during this time, too, because I wasn't a TV producer. Now I was a struggling actor, really.
Do you care, though, at that point? You must have been paid.
Well, yeah, you do care, but if you want to do something, you have to commit yourself to it. So what are you going to do? But
talk about the Showtime thing.
Sure. So Showtime. So now this is the culmination of all of it now. So I wanted to do a show where it wasn't just being in New York or Los Angeles talking about the rest of the country. I thought the original idea was Larry Wilmore Talks to America.
Why would you leave New York? I don't even understand the premise.
Exactly. So I wanted to do kind of a travel show where I would go to a different city each time and be kind of a macro type of thing. The issues that are important there also coincide with the bigger issues, that sort of thing, And so that's where the genesis of the idea came from. And I'm more of a what I call passionate centrist is my point of view.
Right.
And what I mean by that, it doesn't mean that I'm in the middle. It means that I don't care if what I believe in falls on the right or the left. That's what it really means.
Right.
So it doesn't matter to me because I don't have an agenda to prove something on either side. Right.
What position do you have that falls directly on the right?
That falls directly on the right?
That is
the farthest right.
Yeah, what's your farthest right position?
Well, now I have to think of this shit. I don't know if we talked about maybe fiscal issues first off. I could probably find a lot of them. I just can't think right now.
All right, no worries.
But
I'm with you though. I think
the government spends way too much money right now. I'm on that train where it's like enough is enough after a certain point. You just can't keep doing that. It just doesn't make sense to me. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm also I do believe that production is the key to getting the economy going. That the people have to be producing something. One of the biggest declines in America, if you look from the 1970s, is the loss of production, and that coincides with the loss of the middle class because we're not producing things anymore.
That's not much of a right position, though.
Well, it's considered a right position because a left position would be that the government has to intervene in either creating jobs or in stimulating that, where it really is production itself.
Right.
So
that's why I didn't want to talk.
Your idea was then to go into the middle of America with your
I'm to the center, not to go up in a tangent.
To the center of America with a centrist position and do comedy.
Not necessarily the center of America, but just get away from L.A. and New York.
Sure,
really is what it was. And even just because that's my point of view,
which is why you went straight to San Francisco.
Right. But it really has. Just because I say I'm passionate centrist, that's not what I'm putting into the show. That's not what the show is about. The show's. I say that to let you know that I really am the referee on the show more than I have an agenda that I'm trying to prove something. Like I'm trying to prove why you should vote Republican and prove why you should vote Democrat. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I want people to have a place where they can say what they want to say without being attacked. So attack the position, not the person. So that's what I was looking for.
I love doing that on Twitter when someone I'll write a joke, a Republican joke or something, or a joke about whatever, and then someone they'll come at you like screaming in tone, and then if you come back at them with like equanimity, a guy literally thanked me today for not screaming at him.
Right.
And that happened a week ago with the gun thing. Like because people are so used to, like, people come into any sort of partisan battle just both arms fucking flailing,
Take
and
it
it's like
personally these days.
Yeah.
Like it's a personal attack if they're talking about taxes, for Christ's sakes,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever, you know.
Well, yeah, because I think people extrapolate out from whatever if you want to lower taxes, then you must also want guns and take away my reproductive rights and all that shit.
Whole big group. And my point is, just because I may have this point of view doesn't mean I'm attached to a whole big group or something.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you categorize me, you know, just because you think you can do that, and then you can dismiss me by your categorization.
Yeah.
Because that's what they really want to do, is dismiss you by categorizing.
Yes.
Oh,
Me too.
so you're
Like,
this.
people,
Dismissed.
People think I'm a Republican just because I like Trump. I wanted him to win.
Very entertaining, Donald Trump. But anyhow, so that was the idea, and I thought Showtime might be a good place. I knew they didn't have a late night presence, and I thought if I'm ever going to do this type of thing, Showtime would be a great place to go. HBO already has Bill Maher.
Yeah.
You know, and my show, and I knew I didn't want to compete with the entertainment type shows, the Lenos, you know, that type of stuff. That's not really what I do. And I didn't want to do a satire like The Daily Show or Colbert. I wanted to do more of a straightforward political discussion with stand-up in it, with bits in it, like, you know, like the stuff that I've done and all that kind of stuff. So it's a combination of all the stuff.
And how many are you doing? You just did one?
We're just doing one, and then if everybody likes it and everything, then we'll do some more, and then who knows? It could turn into
it's not a stand-up special.
No.
Oh,
okay. It's more of we call it a comedy town hall.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds really intriguing.
Yeah, so it's more like Bill Maher's show in its pure form.
Mm-hmm.
So you starting with the monologue, which I kind of call a travelogue, because it's more about the place and about, you know, me a little bit. I can't compete with topical humor because we had to tape our show in advance. Those jokes are already done, so I'm doing more what I call current humor. So if I'm going to talk about, instead of what somebody said about gay marriage, I'll talk about gay marriage itself as an issue.
Yeah.
So, do people come up and line up and ask you questions like a town hall kind of thing?
I had a question and answer thing. The show went about 2 or 3 hours and nobody left. It was unbelievable, by the way. But we didn't end up using the question and answer. It was kind of anticlimactic at the end of the show after it went a long time.
Yeah.
But I want to have that as part of.
How long is it?
Show.
It's an hour?
Ends up being about 50 minutes.
And what's it called again?
Larry Wilmore's Race, Religion, and Sex in Utah.
And it's already out.
Yes, it came on Showtime last night, and it comes on tomorrow night, Wednesday night again. It's being
just look at
and all month.
Just do a search on your cable box.
That's really cool.
But I'm really excited about it. I tell you, some of the things that I've heard from people is that they really appreciate the fact that I'm letting people have their voice. You know.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And I mean, we had a guy who was, you talk about being in your own box. He was the head of the Genesis group. He was a black Mormon conservative.
Wow.
Yeah, and next to him was also an LDS, Latter-day Saints guy, who was a gay activist and decided to stay in the church and try to affect change by staying in instead of leaving and criticizing, which I thought was an interesting
and
story.
you can be gay in LDS?
Oh, really? I don't know.
Apparently.
You know, they just let black people join in 1970.
Well, not join, but blacks could become priests in 1978.
There was at some point there was no black membership.
No, it's not true.
He just studied it.
Yeah, I was just there for weeks. No, blacks have been Mormons since the 1800s.
Interesting.
Yep.
Was there any?
Well, there were like 3 levels of heaven, and I think they could only be one.
Oh, right. They could only get. It was restricted.
Yeah. It was something like that. Like everything else, since it's like, motherfucker, heaven is restricted.
Well, I created the Bernie Mac show. Why the fuck would you say that?
I can't go to heaven.
All right, that was really interesting. You're a good and funny man.
Thank you.
So check it out.
Watch that show. Thank you. Watch Larry Wilmore, Race, Sex, Religion in Utah. Check your local. Do a fucking search. Google this motherfucker.
Throw your own fucking
2
prayers.
L's?
1 L.
Larry Wilmore with 1 L.
Fucks with it. Well, thanks again for coming in. You guys just got fucked with by the champs. Tune in next week for another amazing black person.
Now you're fucking with the champs.